Hello, and welcome to this Edinburgh Television Festival session. I'm Greg Stuart, Managing Director of So Television, and I should declare an interest here, home of the highly successful Graham Norton YouTube channel. I should also mention we have a television program attached to that channel. Now, we today are about to go beyond the gigs and television to see how comedy is thriving online. It used to be that comedians and producers were a bit scared about posting their precious content online. Who wanted to share their precious product on the world's biggest stage for so little or even no financial return? But not anymore. Today, performers and producers understand that building an audience online is the key to comedy nirvana. Global profit, a massive potential audience, and what's that other little thing that we all crave? Oh yeah, profit. So, to examine the current role of online for the comedy community, I'm joined by a distinguished panel drawn from the business of funny. Let's welcome them now. We're joined by James Taylor, one of the main agents at Avalon, the UK comedy powerhouse that has conquered the world. Daniel England, top agent for Chambers Management, to represent some of the country's funniest performers. Now, I should say we were due to have Hannah Chambers, the lady herself from Chambers Management, but unfortunately Hannah isn't feeling so good today, so I hope she gets better soon. I know she'll be watching her clients on YouTube and probably having some chicken soup medicinally as well. We're also joined by James Loveridge, Director of Entertainment at Little Dot Studios, the market leaders in online content and in all its forms. And finally, we're also joined by Charlie Perkins, who's the head of comedy at Blink Industries, a company very much at the cutting edge of digital comedy. So welcome all, and thanks for being here. Right. Life online has been kind of compulsory over the last 18 months, but the upward curve, it seems to me, was happening long before events were starting in Wuhan. So what I'd like to go to the panel with first is to ask when and what inspired you to get involved in online comedy. And James, can I come to you first?
Me?
Yeah.
This James. What inspired us to go to online comedy first? I think it was obviously very much part of our business before COVID happened. And I think with some brands or clients, we kind of came to it as a consequence of COVID happening. I mean, we have we're a management company, but we're also a highly successful TV production company with a huge catalogue kind of dating back some decades now. And part of it was about us being able to monetize our archive in an interesting way. Lots of shows that there wasn't really, that weren't on secondary television, but were something that people turned out really wanted to see, and there hadn't really been the opportunity to properly pursue people knowing about it. But for other shows like Taskmaster, for instance, which we made a concerted effort to, it's been an ever growing hit since we started doing it. We're in 12 series in now, and that's something that over the course of lockdown, we've it's gained its own online personality and presence, and not just with clips and compilations, but also with a thing we did called home tasking, where Alex really wanted to do something for the people who were fans and people who were stuck at home. So home tasking was something that was a challenge to people around the world and fans of the show, and that became something that's really grown. So a short answer to your question is it depends on show by show. COVID certainly had something to do with it, but I think it was we're always led by the specifics of which client we're working towards or which TV show brand. Yeah.
Daniel, can you remember the moment when it seemed to you that online was going to be as important as it now is?
I'd say one of our main clients is Jimmy Carr, and he has always been very forward-thinking in terms of what to do with his archive. We've got 20 years worth of DVDs and TV appearances. And it was really seeing the amount of views from the channel of his that we already had set up just coming in. It's been overwhelming, really, just the response to how popular shows from 20 years ago are. You feel like you put them on the shelf and you've got to move on, and then we've put them online and millions and millions of views. It's really quite something. And he's a comedian who you can send out in kind of 5-minute chunks and get a real taste for him, but he's also a comedian that you can put a full hour worth and you're getting a huge response. So it's really been the response to his material has been incredibly eye-opening. It's just been hugely successful. Yeah,
it's clear that it all works, and it's clear that it works for you as management people. James Loveridge, your company has been the route for so many people to get online. I'm just interested in this time frame. When was it? When did Little Dot realize that this was a place to go?
So we've been working on YouTube and TV shows and running kind of YouTube accounts for TV shows for about 8-9 years now. But kind of focusing on comedy, I think, is something that we've kind of maneuvered in the last kind of 3 to 4 years. We started working with Chambers Management in kind of April, May of 2019 and working with Jimmy's channel there. And I think one of the key things we've found is with comedians working across so many different production companies, so many different broadcasters, the rights and where these kind of content sit is kind of scattered across a spectrum of rights holders. So utilizing the kind of comedians' channels as a centralized hub and working with them to help edit, optimize content and get it out there has been hugely successful. When we started working with Jimmy, I think he had about 30,000 subscribers. Now he's got 540,000. We expanded our work with Chambers to work with Sarah Millican at the end of 2019, and now she has 330,000 subscribers. Jimmy's done 150 million views on his channel. Like Sarah's done close to 50 million, and it's just about working with these kind of acts to understand the digital language, how the audience wants to consume it, how best to kind of capitalize on this like older content, and how best to kind of optimize and distribute the newer content coming through as well.
And Charlie, you maybe have come later to the party because you're working with very new comedians. You kind of started online, so this was television was a secondary. It was online first. What was it that inspired you to see that comedy could play so well online?
I think it was kind of seeing stuff really online and thinking about sort of expanding creative horizons, I suppose, in UK comedy. I'd come up through live and through Edinburgh and then through radio at the BBC. I think we're seeing quite sort of traditional paths for lots of people. And then we're seeing more and more stuff being developed online by people who were outside of that traditional path, I suppose. And it was all feeling a bit more kind of creative and exciting and something a bit different. So apologies for the noise. And then, so kind of following that path a bit more and trying to find new voices from different places and people especially who had very kind of new, exciting, distinctive visual voices in comedy for me was important. It was seeing stuff and then thinking that's what I want to be doing. So following stuff online.
James Taylor, we've talked about the different effects you have with the individual acts and shows. Tell me about the balance between profile and monetization, because both of those things are what are on offer online. How do you balance that? What's more important?
I think the focus has to be on content always. And that's the case with that's always been our approach with the people that we represent and the shows that we make, is that we try and make them as good as possible and as authentic as possible to the person whose show it is. And then if it's good and people want to watch it, then you can follow that up with money. So Russell Howard has got 6-7 million. Hang on, I did write this down. He's got over 6 million followers on socials across the board. He's had over 450 million views across across all social media platforms with his. So he's always had a really strong following online, and he was the first. He's one of the biggest comics on Facebook. And without wanting to be boring about stats, you kind of have to lean into where your audience is. And he's got a huge live following and a huge online following. So it made sense for him. And he was actually quite a late adopter of being on social media and putting things on, less so on YouTube, just because not all comedians kind of felt comfortable with sort of being a Twitter comedian or being an Instagram comedian. And actually, if you can do it in your authentic voice, then it's then you can feel comfortable with it. And then if it becomes popular and successful business-wise, then that's fine. I think for Russell, the work that we've done with him online has been aimed at helping to build his audience worldwide, which is the beauty of the internet. So now his world tour, when it finally happens this time round, is his biggest by far. Obviously, we've had to rearrange it a few times, but he can now sell out big venues in the United States, and he doesn't have a presence on TV in America, and that's through the internet. So, whilst it might not be, there's obviously a business plan for what we put online for him, but there's a kind of a bigger goal. And in management, when you're looking at things on a more of a broad platform, then if you look at things in a 360 way, then it's not always about that specific clip and how many people click on it and what the income will be from it. It's about it's about how it helps their careers.
Yeah, the transformative nature of this is really important. That's what we're talking about here. This is not just a bolt-on to television work and live work. This is a whole new area, which may be even bigger than the original live television performance from an artist. Daniel, how does that sit with you? Or has your business been changed by the online presence for your major acts?
I'd say definitely. In terms of international reach for all of our clients, it's been huge. It's been great to see for international touring acts like Jimmy Carr and Sarah Millican, who are already well established overseas. It gives us incredibly precise data as to where we can send them next that maybe we hadn't already considered. But also for up and coming clients like Catherine Bohart, through the lockdown, started a weekly online mixed bill show that she was doing and then inviting friends along, called Gigless, which has been incredibly successful and has certainly, it was started because of COVID, because they couldn't go out and do shows anywhere. But it's given her a wide reach across the UK and an international audience that I don't think would have been seeing Catherine for. It's probably jump-started that kind of international audience at least a couple of years ahead of where it would have normally, which has been great. So thanks, COVID. No, not COVID, but the just being able to go out online and just present yourself and your comedy in a very organic, natural way each week is great.
And Charlie, with you, with younger comedians, is it happening now that people don't need to think about those other aspects? I know that people have to think about live, but they can think less about it and worry less about television because online will be their route to success. In other words, you can be an online comedian and not do any of the other stuff that's traditional.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. I should say with the noise, by the way, it's because I'm on set in a studio filming a show that was developed from a YouTube show into a TV prospect. But so apologies if there's any more drilling. But I think that's been amazing. And throughout the pandemic as well, I think the online gigs that we saw have all been so creative and seem to have really opened up accessibility for a lot of people who can't make it to gigs for whatever reason or who can't come to London. It's really expanded that, I think, and that's been great now, seeing a bit of a combination of live gigs with some online still mixed in. So I feel like it will become increasingly prevalent, I think, for comedy gigs to be a mix of sort of live and people doing stuff online. But yeah, for young people, I think obviously it's easier than ever to make your own content that looks good and sounds good with kind of equipment becoming so good that you can get for cheap, and for people to be able to do it from the comfort of their own homes, not have to travel. And also it's just the way people are sharing things, of course, people of a younger generation. But generally, I just think they can be so creative now that they probably weren't able to do otherwise. And with that creativity, can kind of showcase what they do best in a way that really sort of suits their style, rather than go to a gig and be on, a set with lots of other people. They can aesthetically kind of bring something else to the table if they're making this content themselves.
Well, that's very topical, because you're sitting on set. I presume it's for Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared, which is your huge online success, which I think it's public, isn't it? It's picked up by Channel 4, so you're making it for Channel 4. Would that show, and it is a very, very clever show, would that show be on Channel 4 if it hadn't existed, if online hadn't been available to you?
Yeah, I don't think it would. I think that was what was so beautiful about it. I think the people, the creators behind it, as I was mentioning, came from a sort of a different avenue to sort of the straight stand-up that we know, or the acts who go to Edinburgh and maybe progress that way. Came from art school. They made this project all on their own, self-funded it, very sort of small fry thing that then kind of exploded because it was very, very distinctive and unique. And they've been allowed to kind of keep their creative voice online, which I think was an amazing thing. So making the YouTube show without creative involvement from another party, from a channel at that point, really enabled them to sort of secure the vision for it, I think. And that's why now making it with Channel 4 has made a lot of sense, because it really knows what it is. I think it's still going to be a big online prospect for Channel 4 and the BFI who we're making it with. But that transition into longer formats for TV has only been because I think we were enabled to sort of see it as a full thing online before we then translated it into longer form.
James Loveridge. So these are television professionals talking about, and television comedy professionals talking about how they can use online. Now, you and your company, you have to translate what they are offering into something that is palatable for the online market. Now, how difficult is that? People are providing you with material. What is it that you have done and had to tell producers to do to make all of these different forms work?
Well, I think that journey's been a very different one over the 8 years that we've worked on it. I think prime example of what Charlie's talking about with Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared, you've got people that are kind of digital native, they understand it. I mean, I can't wait for that TV show. I thought the web series was hilarious. So you've got people coming through, you've got young talent that are digital natives. Ramesh Ranganathan has regular live streams. Nigel Ung is another one who's has built an incredible online presence. Mo Gilligan being another. And you've got people coming through that fully understand the value of online social content, and kind of it being a bit rough and ready, and knowing that they can, they mess up, and as long as it's authentic, and I think that's the absolutely key thing. So in terms of what's coming through, it's quite exciting because everyone understands and speaks that language. They grew up with these platforms. For the older kind of content that has, archive content and stuff like that, of optimizing this kind of content to make it appropriate for online, you've got two types of languages you need to kind of execute. One being the language of the platform and the algorithm, what the platform requires, be it length of video, frequency of upload, kind of types of optimization. And then you've got the language of the audience. Are you managing the community correctly? Are you engaging with them in a way that they want to kind of talk amongst themselves? We always kind of have the mantra of run it like a fan. Like, all the people that run our channels become super fans of the content that they're managing. And thankfully, a lot of the people in my team are massive kind of comedy aficionados and obsessed with comedy. So getting that tone of voice and understanding the audience of that particular comic, the tone of voice of that particular comic or TV show, and perfectly encapsulating it in a format that best serves the algorithm of the platform. But if you can get those two things married up, and the synergy between the two of them, then it's a recipe for success.
James Taylor, to ask you about Avalon, a huge company, huge number of acts, enormous success. Online starts to build, it becomes more and more important. How do you handle that as a company? Did you bring in specialists, or did people retrain? Or tell me how that works, because it's very important that, as James Loveridge is pointing out, that the content is in the right form to be successful.
Yeah, well, we now have a department and a number of individuals whose job it is specifically to work online. And we have, in fact, we worked with Little Dot for a while early on. With lots of our, because we produce in-house, we promote in-house, and we have our own in-house marketing and PR, it made sense for us to be across all of it, particularly when there's so much kind of synergy between the artists that we represent and those that we produce the TV shows of. Then, yeah, we have it. It's been a gradual process, but it's now we do it ourselves and have a strategy for each individual client or brand. We work with John Oliver, who I've managed for a long time now, for 20 years, and last week tonight that was a strategy that which we make for HBO, that had a strategy of putting stuff online on a show that's on a premium subscription channel, and that was something that, as an example of a strategy that we developed alongside the broadcast we were making the show for, and it was, at the time, we're 8 seasons in now, and at the time it was something that people didn't really think was a good idea, but actually it massively improved the reach of the show, and it really helped HBO's subscriber base in North America. So that's all different now that everything's a streamer. But the short answer to your question is we do it ourselves.
Okay. Daniel, let's talk about the downside, if there is one. We're all these positives. But is there a downside? Is there still that fear of giving away content, particularly for comedians for whom material is a precious thing? And this great bit of material which you can sell around in your live tours is gone to everybody. Is that an issue with clients where people say, I don't want to do that material online. I want to save that for the tour?
I'd say definitely in terms of people developing their shows in kind of the work in progress stage, they're still, and rightly so, very reticent to put any of that material online because it isn't the finished product. But the acceptance and understanding that existing online is a huge part of helping your career grow, I think from even a year, 2 years ago, where there was that fear around it, has pretty much completely dissipated. And at this point, everybody is viewing, what can I do to go online? What can I bring? If I'm not necessarily bringing the chunk of my actual stand-up show, what else do I have in my arsenal that's going to present my voice, who I am, to the best audience possible? So I think somebody like Nabil Abdul Rashid, who we recently started working with, he came up through Britain's Got Talent and got a huge audience there. And since then, he's been doing semi-regular shows on YouTube that are kind of 10-minute, kind of John Oliver style monologues about current events and news, which are a great calling card for him. It's not something he's going to do on stage. His stand-up, it's certainly in that style, it's his voice, but it's a different thing to his straight stand-up show. And so YouTube gives him that platform to show other sides to what he can do, but it's still presenting, hey, I'm just a really funny guy at the end of the day.
James Loveridge, staying on the negative side, but in a positive way, is it, and James Taylor touched on this whole idea of the way that artists see themselves online and how you deal with it, but particularly producers. Do you ever face the kind of digital Luddite from the television world, where they say, "Well, we're television. We know how to do funny. We don't understand how you're doing it here," and there's a negativity around that, or are people embracing fully?
Yeah, I think that, so my internet cut out slightly, so I missed part of your question, but I heard TV Luddite, and I think I know where we were going with the question. So
fill in the rest.
That was a battle that we used to have quite a lot. I think people have now understand the value of online. We still do come across that where, it's, as Dan was kind of saying about putting the best joke and not exposing it too early, but sometimes with TV shows, or, you know, even kind of TV stand-up, they're like, oh, don't put that joke out as a clip, because then they won't watch the linear. And it's like, as I'm sure James will kind of testify to the fact that you build these massive audiences on online clips, and it promotes linear. It never detracts from it. These two things can live together harmoniously, and actually they support each other. You know, I don't believe anybody's going to watch a 5-minute monologue and go, well, I've seen the half-hour show now, I don't need to bother. That's not how it works. If they watch that 5 minute, they like it, and they become fans of the content, fans of the talent, fans of the show, that only promotes social awareness of the show, you know, people talking about it, people sharing it, appointments of view. So I still do have those conversations every now and then, but they're becoming less frequent as just the pure scale of shows like Last Week Tonight and stuff like that are so prominent online. They have such a strong online presence that it's kind of impossible to ignore. Same with Graham Norton's show.
I think also, sorry to jump in, but if you're a good comedian, then you should always be confident of being able to write your next good thing. So, and I think that consumers tend to not think about, or viewers tend to not think about how they're consuming something. So as long as what you're creating is good, then you find the right platform to put it on. And sometimes that might be via a clip online. Sometimes it might be through a stand-up show, which might become a Netflix special or whatever it is. I think from a talent content point of view, just make it good, and as long as you remain up to date and don't become one of those Luddites, then you're okay.
James, print that and put that above the door at Avalon. That's the comedy.
It's there already. I just read it verbatim.
I thought he said it already. Okay, we're getting towards the end, and I mean, this has been really interesting, and I think it's very clear that how well it's all working. I wanted to ask about the negative side because there always will be one, but it's mainly positive. Just as we head to the end, I'm going to go around you all, and I want to ask you about your own online experience. Tell me what you find funny online. What's best online? It doesn't have to be, and of course your own clients can be involved, but what's working for you? What's the go-to clips that you've used over the last months? Charlie, start with you.
Unfair to go first. I think sketch is working. I think it's really interesting. I do think it is. That long old line that sketch is dead. I think currently it's not. I think it's thriving, as we kind of talked about before. I think new acts, especially, being able to showcase stuff quite easily and cheaply themselves online and find audiences. So yeah, sketch and character, I'd say, is a real revival. And kind of with that.
Charlie, name somebody.
Name and shame, or name and promote. What's it?
Name and promote. That's what we're here for.
I think Archie Henderson, aka the Jazz Emu, has been doing amazing work online across the pandemic and kind of beyond. Just really super creative, very kind of inspirational, new character work. I think there's interesting things in, I know it is a Netflix show, but The Way I Think You Should Leave, which is a Tim Robinson sketch show, has kind of spread itself online, and the breakdown of sketches and how they promote it there that's worked so well. I think it really draws people back to the main thing, as you said. But yeah, in general, I'd say sketch stuff and and character stuff. And Alistair Green is an amazing example as well. Just really, really simply shot, very kind of simply shot, but very effective. And and that's kind of spread him into all sorts of other things that he's doing currently just by doing very simple iPhone videos. So,
great, excellent promotion. Daniel, for you?
I'm a huge fan of long form stuff, kind of the 3-hour plus side of things. So there was a network that kind of sprung up because of the pandemic last year called Planet Scum, which was based out of US improv comedian started by Chris Gethard. And there was a show within that called the George Lucas Talk Show that ran for 3 hours plus every week and was the best thing in my week all year last year. And it was a live show that got turned into something that just looked like this. And you could watch live, you could interact. It was amazing, but something that I never would have seen otherwise because they used to do it in a tiny theatre in New York. So that's been great. Long form stuff like that, podcasts that can expand online, like Office Hours Live, a Tim Heidecker show, is another one that I love. If it goes for like 2 hours plus, then I'm in. That's
It's very funny. They told us, the people who know these things, that the current or young audience had an attention span of under 2 minutes and didn't like anything cerebral. You've just disproved that. James Taylor, what makes you laugh online?
I think, well, Daniel mentioned podcasts that we've not obviously didn't have time to touch on here, but I think, again, the lines between platforms are blurring all the time. And I think that, something like Off Menu, which is Ed Gamble and James Acaster's podcast, it's a brilliant example of something that started in a very basic way. It happened to be two very successful comics, but it's become a massive thing that's a big thing live now. I think that Paul Choudry is a really interesting example of someone who constantly puts brilliant content up online across all platforms, and broadcasters don't know what to make of him because he's a really original and eccentric, unique performer, and but he sells out Wembley Arena on the strength of his huge following, multicultural, and really he's tremendously someone I've worked with for a long time. He's tremendously exciting and gut-wrenchingly funny, I think. So,
great. Cool. James Loveridge, you're seeing through your company that you're processing millions of hours, particularly if it's Daniel's material running at 3 hours, but you're processing millions of hours. What stood out for you?
So I was asked not to list a client, so that kind of restricts the amount of things I can say, to work with quite a mix of people. But I suppose the online performer that I'd say excites me most at the moment is Mark Rebellet, who is a improv rapper, comedian, online performer who he used to tour the festival circuits, and then when lockdown happened, he moved kind of more onto online, and he does live streams and long form videos. So they're about 3 hours long. So Dan will love them. But he gets the US rappers, guests, sometimes to kind of co-live stream with him. But they're just really entertaining, really funny musical performances that are great to have on in the background, great to get ready for a night out, that kind of stuff. But what's really impressive is how he uses all of the multiple functionalities of the platform. So he uses not just live streams, but super chat, donations, kind of super fans, almost like a YouTube Patreon equivalent, to help generate additional revenue to help fund his performances. So it's really entertaining. He's usually in his pants or a kimono, rapping and making me laugh. So Mark Rebellet.
Sounds good. Look, I'm just going to put my Graham Norton hat on for a second, just to finish this, but it is tied to one of our panelists' clients. Talk shows are born for YouTube because it's about moments. That's what talk shows are. We create moments, and they have comedy in them. If you haven't ever seen it, go on YouTube and look for Greg Davis stories on the Graham Norton channel. Greg Davis is the world's funniest storyteller, and we managed to isolate those stories and put them online, and they live forever. They are the funniest thing. There's several of them, but they are the funniest thing, and that for me sums up what comedy can do on YouTube and online. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, panel. That was really interesting, and I think it's exciting as we move forward. That online is only going to get bigger, and we'll get more stars, more revenue, more content, more excitement. So that is a good thing. Thanks very much for your time today. Thanks very much to our headline sponsor, YouTube, and please enjoy the rest of the festival. Thank you.